Not all of the divine atoms of the Absolute have cognizance of their own happiness. There are many who remain without true self-cognizance. Creation unfolds so that those self-incognizant divine atoms can enter into the world and reach their own self-realization. The tree of life represents the multidimensionality of the universe. The topmost spheres of the tree of life are the most supreme and the most subtle. Descending down the tree of life, things become more dense and more materialistic. The third dimension, Malkut, is the most materialistic sphere of the 10, and it is the sphere in which we live. Those divine atoms that lack true self-cognizance project a spark of themselves into the world. This projection is the ray of creation, the ray of Okedanok, which descends down the tree of life, animating matter and energy. Nothing could exist without this spark within it, without this consciousness within it. As everything that exists is a trio of matter, energy, and consciousness. A simple atom has consciousness, it has will. And this is something that has been proven by quantum physics. It's obvious that there's a huge difference between the level of consciousness of an atom in comparison to the level of consciousness of a dolphin. And likewise, there's a difference between the level of consciousness of a dolphin in comparison to that of a human being. These different levels of consciousness are the result of evolution. Evolution is a process in which matter and energy becomes more complicated. When that spark first enters into the third dimension, it is the minerals that are the first to receive that light. It is in the mineral kingdom that that spark first starts to evolve and gain more experience and more sophistication. Once that spark has progressed through the mineral kingdom and reached a sufficient level of experience, it is then able to enter into the plant kingdom. Like the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom has a vast range and variety of different forms of life, with some forms of life being more complex than others. As that spark progresses and develops itself through the plant kingdom, eventually acquires enough experience and knowledge in order to enter into the animal kingdom. But when reaching the pinnacle of the animal kingdom, that spark is then ready and prepared in order to inhabit a human body. We see that at the pinnacle of the animal kingdom, there are some animals that start to show some glimmers of independence. As in all of these kingdoms, from minerals to plants, animals, and even the human kingdom, we see that they all move in groups, they all have collective mind. They don't have individual mind. Within us, we have the ego. The ego is not our true being. The ego is a result of all the past experiences we had evolving through the four kingdoms of nature. When we related with an experience in the past, through animal desire, through attachment, a part of our consciousness became conditioned to repeat that desire. When a part of our consciousness becomes conditioned by a desire, that part becomes a subconscious element. It becomes an ego. This subconscious element only wants to fulfill that experience again. It becomes a rogue element in the psyche that only wants to fulfill that action again. In the subconsciousness, it projects that dream. It dreams and fantasizes about that which fascinates it. And what's even worse, it competes with other egos in order to control the mind, the heart, and the body, so that it can perform that action again. But within us, we have a vast quantity of these different elements, of these different egos. But the ego is not a unity. The ego is a multiplicity of conflicting desires. As long as we have the ego within us, we do not have true individuality. We only have an illusion of individuality. It is the ego that causes us to react to life like machines with no real cognizance. It is the ego that keeps us asleep and in ignorance of our true nature. But someone who is working against their own ego becomes a new person. They don't just follow the tides that pull the sleeping crowds here, there and everywhere, but they become comprehensive, insightful, and able to stand on their own 2 feet. The Bible tells us about the 4 bodies of sin. These 4 bodies have also been called the inferior quaternary. And this inferior quaternity corresponds to the physical, vital, astral and mental bodies. The 4 bodies of sin are called the 4 bodies of sin because it is the ego that controls them. As we progress through the 4 kingdoms of nature, we are developing this inferior quaternary and we are developing the ego. These 3 brains are in the physical body, and they are the intellectual brain, which is located in the head and is related with the mental body, the emotional brain, which is located in the area of the solar plexus and is related with the astral body. The 3rd brain is constituted by the 3 centers and is called the motor instinctive sexual brain and is related with the physical and vital bodies. If we want to know the processes of the different egos we have, we need to observe the 3 brains. We are the most dangerous beings of all the 4 kingdoms. We have the animal elements inside, but we have an even greater capacity to express them and invent new ways and methods to enhance their mode of action due to our intellect. The roar of the lion becomes the roar of the atomic bomb. The thrust of the goat becomes the thrust of the porn movie, the internet, the magazine. The strut of the peacock becomes the strut of the catwalk. The spider's web becomes the deceptive web of the government, the deceptive web of pseudo-religious institutions. We have used our intellect to further express and actualize the animal ego to such an extent that the earth now trembles and is barely even able to withstand our weight. But are we the pinnacle of evolution? Are all the wars, the lies, deceit, rape, poverty, selfishness and suffering all that amounts from these millions of years of evolution? We are the pinnacle of evolution, but we are only the pinnacle of mechanical evolution. One thing is mechanical evolution, and another thing is conscious evolution. Conscious evolution is the path of the true human being. But in order to comprehend what this means, we need to understand what this word human being is. The word human is a Sanskrit word. Hu means spirit, Atman, our own inner being. Man means manas, the mind. So a human being is a being who has his mind under the service of the spirit. If we are honest with ourselves, we will confirm that we do not do the will of our spirit. We do not have our mind under the service of the spirit, but we have our mind dominated by the animal ego. We are not true human beings in the complete sense of the word, but we are intellectual animals. We have the animal ego and we have the intellect, but we do not do the will of our being. The intellectual animal has the capacity to become a true human being, but in order to do this, he needs the complete annihilation of the ego and the creation of the true human being inside. Many people have this idea that we are all in this ascending slope and everything is just getting better and better. And this is the modern theory of evolution. If we take a look, an honest look around us, we will see that this is not the case. Humanity may be making technological advancements. due to the sole work of an extraordinarily small part of the population. But if we are honest, we will see that humanity is in reality spiritually devolving. Humanity is degenerating. Humanity only cares about animal desire. We only care about lust, pride, making money, war. We only care about fulfilling the desires and attachments of our ego, and we shun everything to do with spirituality. The technology of war is alarmingly becoming more high-tech and dangerous. Drug abuse is rife. The youth are becoming more and more increasingly sexualized and disillusioned. Politicians, institutions, community workers are all struggling to deal with the increasing complexity of the problems that we face on a day-to-day basis. When evolving through the animal kingdom, we developed the four bodies of sin, the inferior quaternary. But everything that has a beginning has an end. This inferior quaternary is constructed with a substance that belongs to nature. And everything that belongs to nature has a beginning and it has an end. Everything in nature is born, grows, reaches its peak, degenerates and then dies. And the same thing applies for this inferior quaternary. When that spark reaches the kingdom of the intellectual animal, it receives 108 opportunities, 108 lives in order to revolutionize itself against the animal ego and enter into conscious evolution. Within this threshold of 108 lives, if the subject shows no interest through action in revolutionizing themselves against the ego, the subject then enters into the process of devolution. This process of devolution involves the agonizing breakdown of the internal bodies that were created by the process of evolution, as well as the complete annihilation of the ego. In evolution, we see matter and energy becoming more complex. In devolution, we see matter and energy becoming less complex. This process of devolution is the process of being recycled by nature. It has been called the process of hell and the process of the second death by many different religions. This is an extremely painful as well as a conscious process where the totality of the consciousness that is trapped in the ego becomes liberated. That spark devolves and passes through the inferior dimensions of nature and eventually comes out the other end, completely pure and ready to start a new phase of evolution. This is not a permanent process as many institutions have tried to claim. This process of being recycled by nature is a temporary process, but in the end the consciousness does come out the other end, but it gains absolutely nothing except a huge amount of suffering. The vast majority of people on this planet are on their 108th life. And if we do not make supreme efforts to revolutionize ourselves against the ego, if we show no interest through action in rebelling against the ego, we will then enter into the inferior worlds and start to be processed by nature. If we want this to be our fate, then the door is more than wide and open for us. But if we don't want to go through this agonizing suffering, we must enter into the revolution of the consciousness.